Expelled Ambassador to the US Ebrahim Rasool will be returning to South Africa this week. On Friday, the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio took to X to announce his expulsion from the US. Dr. Kingsley Makhubela, director at RiskRecon, joins us now via video link as we look at the way forward in selecting a new diplomat representing South Africa in the United States. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon, Dr. Makhubela. So we saw how Rasool's comments about Trump and his administration split sentiment in South Africa, especially within the GNU. Given the escalating tensions in the US relations, there can be no doubt that a lot of work is cut out for whoever Pretoria decides to appoint for this position. Which route is South Africa likely to take here?
Good afternoon, Unati, and thanks very much for the opportunity to talk to your viewers. What ought to happen now is for South Africa to identify a candidate. And after identifying this candidate, South Africa must then provide the details of the candidate, essentially a CV of the candidate, to the US government. This is done under Article 4 of the Geneva Convention. It remains confidential. And the receiving state, in this case, the United States, they have the right to decline that candidate. There have been a few cases in history. If you look at the Vienna Convention examples they give, for instance, in 1891, a senator from the United States was appointed as a minister to China. And China refused that on the ground that in the Senate, he made disparaging remarks about China. Similarly, I think the recent case is 1977. Greece refused to accept a candidate from the US because that ambassadorial candidate, during the Senate hearing, Greece said he made disparaging remarks. The latest case was in 2002 in Iran, when the United Kingdom appointed a candidate and the Iranian declined, saying that this candidate was a spy, a Jewish spy, that's what they said. But the receiving state, Unati, are under no obligations to provide reasons why they are declining an agreement from a particular country. They have the right to be silent. But the conventional wisdom has been that people do give limited reasons for whatever decline they opt for.
And I mean, it does then, present a very tricky situation for South Africa. Let's look at just some of the developments. I mean, upon the announcement of that expulsion, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, accused Ambassador Rasool of being a race-baiting politician who hates America. I mean, how does South Africa navigate this murky space where some accuse the Trump administration of weaponizing foreign diplomacy and trade, especially as there is this real possibility that South Africa has lost AGOA and, of course, there's other fears of other implications?
Unati, what we have to take responsibility for South Africa, if you look at Article 6 of the Vienna Convention, the expulsion of the ambassador, it's an expulsion of an individual, not a country. The ambassador in our case has been expelled for, coming up with very offensive words against his host. So that's the problem of the individual. It's not the problem of the state. If he was expelled for articulating government policies, then his expulsion is for the mission. And there are different options that states have exercised in cases of decline of agrama. Some states have downgraded their embassies. Some states have just kept quiet and not sent an ambassador as a message to the receiving state. So the challenges that are there with respect to AGOA and so on, and the policies that the Trump administration is having, ought to be challenged head on. And they ought to be challenged respectfully. Whoever we appoint must be very careful not to get personal, to focus on clarifying the South African policy position vis-a-vis what the Americans are having in mind.
It becomes very difficult when there are too many players communicating with the US. But Dr. Makhubela, appreciate your time and your analysis. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Kingsley Makhubela, Director at RiskRecon there for us.